Speaker.
There will now be an opportunity for a silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. Order. We come to notice of motion. Does any member wish to give notice of a motion? Honourable member. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House debate the lack of coordination, cooperation and efficiency in functions that the Department of Public Works has to perform for the Department of Home Affairs, its impact on the work of Home Affairs and solutions to resolve this. Thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Honourable member right at the back. You and the ANC, yes.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I move on behalf of ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates addressing challenges related to migration, including intergroup conflict, economic marginalization, and the inability to access suitable services. I thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? The IFP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that I'll move at the next sitting of the House that the House debates what measures could be put in place by government to empower entrepreneurs without promoting tenderpreneurship.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Right at the back, honourable member.
Thank you, Speaker. I move on behalf of ANC that in its next sitting, the House debate means to expand access to food production schemes in rural areas. I thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Honourable member in front.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that in the next sitting, that this Parliament of Public Representatives urgently debate whether it was legitimate in a modern multi-party democracy for political parties in power to exploit public and state resources to their advantage at the total exclusion of the others.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Right at the back, honourable member.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC that in the next meeting, the House debate an integrated approach to address substance and alcohol abuse. I thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Right at the back, honourable member.
I move on behalf of the ANC that in the next sitting of the House, it debates the high turnover of senior officials in government departments and the impact it has on the efficiency of departments. I thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? That doesn't appear to be the case. Honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move on behalf of the IFP that the House debates what measures can be put in place to monitor the high legal and sick leave cost in the South African Police Service, which are currently being left unchecked and swallowing increased large chunk of SSPS budget. Thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Honourable member.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates ways to promote and support the well-being of the senior citizens so that they can meaningfully participate in society. Thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? That doesn't appear to be the case. Before we move on to motions without notice, I wish to recognize in the gallery the delegation from the Parliament of Malawi. Welcome to you. Takulandelani kuno ku South Africa. Welcome. Thank you. We now come to motions without notice. Are there any motions without notice?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes with sadness the alarming incidents of rape and brutal killing of young children in our country. Further notes the recent incidents of the murders of 2 young children in Diepsloot, the 12-year-old in Mpumalanga, and many more other incidents. We commend the work done by SAPS in apprehending the perpetrators. We call upon the religious organizations, NGOs, the private sector, political parties, and the broader communities to work together with government in dealing with this ailment in our society. We believe that if we work together, we will be able to make progress, and we therefore convey our deepest condolences to all families, friends, and communities that have been affected by these tragedies. I thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Chief Whip of the Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move without notice on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that the House notes that the anonymous crime tip-off service, Crime Line, has been awarded 2 media awards at the 35th Annual Crime Stoppers International Conference in Barbados during the first week of October. Also notes that the organization Crime Stoppers Southern Africa, that consists of Crime Line and other crime stop programs, won the bid to host the 2014 conference on the African continent for the first time. Further notes that preparations are already underway to host the prestigious Crime Stoppers International Conference here in Cape Town next year, and acknowledges that the conference provides South Africa with an opportunity to bring crime fighters from around the world to our shores to share ideas and study the latest trends in global crimes. Further acknowledges the important role that Crime Line has played in empowering ordinary South Africans to help reduce terrible high levels of crime in our beloved country, and therefore congratulates Crime Line on their success and wishes them well in their as they continue their battle to make South Africa a safer place for all who live in it. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Honourable Member right at the back.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. On behalf of the ACDP, I move without notice that the House congratulates the Central KwaZulu-Natal bodyboarding team on winning the South African Bodyboarding Championships, which were held from the 22nd to the 27th of September 2013 in Mossel Bay in the Western Cape. Further congratulates team members Mark McFarlane, Brian Painter, Sean Muller, Chris Green, Bevan Langley, Errol Wiles, and Sarah Houston for their efforts in assisting accident victims 20 kilometres outside of Kokstad on their way to the championship. Expresses condolences to family and friends of those who died and wishes all injured and involved in this traumatic experience a speedy recovery. Thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Honourable Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move without notice that the House congratulates Honourable Thapelo Chilwane, a member of this Parliament who has been appointed as President of the Commonwealth Women's Parliament at the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Congress last month. We believe that her appointment proves that proves the quality and ability of women that South Africa and the continent is producing. Who are getting appointed to a range of international organizations. We acknowledge that among her first duties was to preside over the election of the chairperson of Commonwealth Women's Parliament, where another African, the Honorable Rebecca Kadaga from Uganda, was appointed. We further acknowledge that her appointment has brought honor not only to South Africa, but to the continent as a whole. And we congratulate Honorable Tapelo Chilwane on her appointment and ensure her of Parliament's continued support. I thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Honourable Chief Whip or opposition?
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes that Orlando Pirates has reached the final of the Orange Confederation African Football Championship League. Also notes that this is due to their hard-fought one-each draw away from home against Esperance of Tunisia this past Saturday, the 18th of October 2013. Recognizes the hard work of the entire team over the past season and congratulates the team on once again flying the South African flag high in the CAF Championship League. Wishes Orlando Pirates the best of luck as they prepare for the much anticipated final against Egyptian giants Al Ali. I so move.
There certainly can't be any objection to such a sensible motions, but I'll put it nonetheless. Are there any objections? Thank you very much. No objections, agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that the House recognizes that Mr. Sandile Ngobo, a young man coming from a rural area called Guamafunze in Pietermaritzburg, who is studying towards his PhD, for his breakthrough in developing the world's first digital laser. Note that Mr. Ngobo, along with other researchers at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, has taken laser technology to the highest level globally. Further note that this innovation is regarded as a milestone in laser technology and could spur future laser-related innovations. We recognize that Mr. Ngobo's breakthrough proves that South Africans can compete amongst the best in the world. We acknowledge that this level of innovation by a South African is further proof that we are on track as a country in world-class research and finding solutions to global challenges. We congratulate young Sandile Ngobo on his achievement and wishes him well on the completion of his PhD. I thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Thank you. That doesn't appear to be the case. In which case, we move on. We move on to member statements. And the first item on the order paper is member statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? The ANC. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Speaker. The ANC congratulates Orlando Pirates for advancing to the finals of the African Champions League after courageously holding the two-time continental champions, Esperance FC, to a 1-1 draw in Tunisia on Saturday. Not only did the goal by Roy Mahamudza in the second half of the game silence the hostile and terrifying Tunisian crowd, it also ignited a sense of renewed pride, patriotism, and confidence in our nation's ability to achieve the unimaginable on international platforms. Despite the testing conditions, the intimidating Esperance supporters and the pressure of taking on some of the continent's soccer giants on foreign grounds, the Buccaneers displayed character, tenacity, and determination to overcome the odds. The only South African club to have won this tournament before Pirates brilliantly displayed to all of us the caliber of sporting temperament this country has not seen since the early years of our democracy. The strength of our national soccer team is in the quality of soccer clubs and the competitiveness of the tournaments in which they participate. When Pirates obtained its first star, when it won the African Champions League in 1995, a year later in 1996, Bafana also won the African Nations Cup tournament. We are confident that Pirates' performance will reignite our national soccer hunger to accomplish the impossible, the courage to conquer the difficulties and the passion to pursue its dreams. We are deeply encouraged by Pirates' performance in this tournament thus far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The DA.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Tuesday, the Demarcation Board announced that it would go ahead with the merger of Midvaal Municipality and Mfuleni and Sidibeng. This insistence of the Demarcation Board of ramming through the metro despite the overwhelming rejection by the inhabitants of Midvaal clearly demonstrated by the over 9,000 objections to the measure is clear proof that the Demarcation Board has compromised any semblance of independence. It is fast gaining a reputation as a gerrymandering tool that acquiesces to the ANC, which cannot live with the fact that a party other than itself can win elections and run a municipality. It is unacceptable that in the democratic South Africa, the leading party holds on to power at all costs, even compromising the independence of institutions such as the Demarcation Board. Studies have shown that Midvaal is the best-run municipality in Gauteng and has seen the fastest economic growth in the province this year. It is also the only DA-run municipality in the province. This partial and flawed decision should be totally condemned by all political parties represented in this parliament. Thank you.
Cope.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. COPE calls on the South African Child Gauge of the University of Cape Town's Children Institute to include child murders and rape in their future reports. It is indeed unacceptable to hear and read about the murder of innocent and vulnerable children. As a matter of fact, is South Africa a place for a child? The kidnapping, rape and murder of 2 toddlers by 5 men in Diepsloot is sickening. Children of South Africa are not safe anywhere. The 2 toddlers were found in a public toilet cubicle in the early hours of Tuesday between the shacks in Diepsloot. They were reported missing over the weekend, but not enough was done to search for them. Why is it that missing children are found too late? How many children are still to lose their children and dignity before the police get the right skills to search and the victim alive? On the other hand, COPE would like to commend the police for their swift action in arresting the perpetrators of this heinous crime. We are calling on the courts not to give them bail. They must also get a harsh sentence with no possibility of a parole. Thank you.
The ANC.
Nkosi Somlo. In line with the ANC government's goal of creating sustainable housing developments, where our people take ownership of their properties, the ANC welcomes the initiative of the city of Tshwane in their handing over of 1,505 title deeds to the residents of Soshanguve, north of Pretoria. This transferring of home ownership to more than 1,500 families took place during the weekend of October 12, 2013. This was in addition to the handing over of 2,296 title deeds to beneficiaries of RDP houses in Hammanskraal proper, Hammanskraal West proper, Hammanskraal West Extension 1, Stingwater RDP, Stingwater Extension 1 to 3, and Stingwater Extension 4 to 8 on October 5. The ANC believes that the handing over of title deeds as a means of transference of home ownership to the people who did not own properties before engenders a sense of pride in their homes, streets, and areas, and advances the entire community. The ANC remains committed to addressing the inherited housing backlogs, current and growing needs, and aspirations of all communities with regard to access to housing. Diabule.
The IFP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
One IFP at a time.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Which one is going to be? Honorable Ambrosini, you have the floor, sir.
Lack of coordination, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, many members of this, Mr. Speaker, many members of this House have lost their life to cancer. Many more will. We all know somebody, a relative or a friend, who died of cancer. 10 million people die of cancer every year, worldwide, 600,000 in the United States alone. 1 person in 2.8 will have cancer in his lifetime. The scientific paradigm on cancer is wrong, and is perhaps the greatest failure of modern science in history. We need to focus our government attention to develop new strategies to deal with cancer. There are treatments for cancer. We have made them illegal. We have created in this country, as in other countries, a legal framework in which only that which has been proven with private money to be effective and safe can be administered to patients. All that which cannot make a profit and cannot go through big pharma, the conglomerate of pharmaceutical industries, is not made available, and it's prohibited from being administered to patients, no matter how life-saving it is. Millions of people are going through the hell of being a cancer patient and die and suffer, possibly unnecessarily, because in this country and in the other countries, the government has not come to the table in funding research, expediting approval procedures, even there where there is no profit to be made. South Africa was the first country to break the rules with the heart transplants. I will be liaising with the minister. I will be writing to the Minister of Health to plead that we take heed of the historical example and we establish in this country a center which can bring together different treatments of cancer which exist, because there is no prevention for cancer, there are no condoms, and in terms of numbers, is perhaps a greater issue than HIV/AIDS. Thank you.
I thank the Honorable Ambrosini. All member, welcome back. We're delighted to have you back. UDM.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Over the past few years, there has been an increase in the number of legislations that are declared unconstitutional by the Constitutional Court. This occurs despite Parliament having spent millions of rands soliciting legal opinion and advice from the so-called constitutional law experts about the constitutionality of such legislations. The United Democratic Movement is concerned about this, as it undermines the legislative role of Parliament as an institution that makes and passes laws for the Republic of South Africa. We call on Parliament to adopt some punitive measures against the culprits. One of the things Parliament should consider is doing claim back some of the fees paid to lawyers who give it surely constitutional law advice. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The ANC.
Honorable Speaker, the ANC's commitment in encouraging the creation of new businesses cooperatives, and the expansion of small business has borne fruit. This was evident when 4 cooperatives, which were established and owned by the youth, received certificates for the registration of their cooperatives at a youth empowerment outreach event that was hosted by the Department of Trade and Industry on Friday, 4th October 2013 at Velgeval in the Northwest Province. The setting up of these cooperatives has been made possible by the ANC Northwest government working together with the NYDA and the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission to assist the youth to realize their dreams of becoming fully fledged entrepreneurs, as well as inspiring other young people in the area and beyond. The ANC is encouraged by this initiative, which is in line with its economic policy assertions of supporting and expanding small businesses and cooperatives as one of the critical vehicles in creating youth employment, as well as absorbing the young unemployed into the job market. Moreover, the ANC urges the youth to make use of the NYDA services so that they may also start up their own businesses. We know that this is not only for the youth, but it also applies to the nation at large. I thank you.
Zapu.
Mr. Speaker, in the next few days, learners in public and independent schools in South Africa will be sitting for their end-of-year examinations. On behalf of AZAPO, I wish all learners well. We also call upon learners to refrain from doing things that will put their future in jeopardy, that will bring the examinations into disrepute and cast doubt on the integrity of the examinations. AZAPO calls upon the class of 2013 to make the country proud. Thank you.
The DA.
Thank you, Speaker. The residents of Krugersdorp in the West Rand of Gauteng have suffered water cuts 8 out of the last 9 months. One recent cut lasted 5 days. Earlier this year, in May, burst pipes left residents without water 3 times in less than 2 weeks. In July, residents experienced cutoffs due to 6 burst pipes in 1 day. The affected suburbs are Randendal, Krugersdorp North, Kenmare, Monument, Noordheuvel, Rangeview and Manziville. How can schools teach and hospitals care for the sick without water? Old age homes are struggling. People cannot even flush toilets. The situation is dire with serious health risks. Furthermore, residents' constitutional rights to water is being seriously infringed. This breakdown in basic service delivery cannot be tolerated. On the 14th of October 2013, the municipal manager issued a statement for the very first time, stating that because of the resealing project, some wards in Mahale City will again face water disruptions between the 16th and the 30th of October. Mahale City and Rand Water are currently blaming one another for the disruptions. Rand Water claims that reservoirs are 100% full, while the Mahale City claims that the reservoirs are due for upgrading. My colleague, the Honourable Dreyer, wrote a letter to the Minister of Water Affairs appealing to her urgent intervention. Madam Minister, what has been done to alleviate the crisis in Mahale City?
The ANC.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The ANC welcomes the official unveiling of the R81 road by President Jacob Zuma in Limpopo on Tuesday, 8 October 2013. The road links the rural town of Giyani and the city of Polokwane. This project has been made possible by the Limpopo ANC government's investment of more than 249 million in the construction of the R81 road. This new structure enables residents to travel easier within the province, move goods between Polokwane and Giyani, as well as shorten traveling time and reduce the cost of doing business between Polokwane and Giyani. The unveiling of the road is part of the ANC government's continuous program of rolling out infrastructure programs, thus contributing to the development of the poorest regions of our country, overcoming spatial inequalities, unlocking key bottlenecks in the economy, and structurally transforming our society. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The IFP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the past week, the Global Slavery Index, compiled by the Walk Free Foundation, told one of the most tragic tale of almost 30 million people living in desperation under slave conditions around the world. Slave labor being the order of the day. Sadly, our own country and other African countries, including some of our trading partners in BRICS, have not escaped the rather exposing these appalling images of gross inhumanity. Where are the champions of the working class around the world and the downtrodden? What has happened to the clarion call that workers of the world unite, supposedly to rid ourselves, our brothers and sisters, and our own women and children of the shackles of modern-day slavery and feudalism? Or have our human senses degenerated and we have become what Marx referred to as the false messiahs of socialism, noted for their incorrigible lust for state privileges and power, only to conform and perpetuate the seditious social doctrines of the past? As South Africans, our struggle for justice in history should have taught us that the principles of justice are universal, and therefore a compromise on any amounts to abandoning justice. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Cope.
Thank you, Speaker. The Department of Public Works and Administration should note the Labour Court order handed down which reinstated the NYDA CEO, Stephen Ngubeni. Said on Monday he felt vindicated after the Labour Court ordered his reinstatement. Hundreds of millions of public money is annually spent in labor-related matters, in disciplinary hearings and precautionary suspensions of people in the employment of the state and public entities. In many cases, State Departments are found to be flouted provisions of our labor laws, which were enrolled in the statutes of our country to protect vulnerable workers and state employees from exploitation and political purges. Contracts of employment are supposed to regulate the affairs between the employers and employees. The legal framework was not meant to protect those allegedly guilty of fraud and corruption. On October 8, the NYDA board decided to fire Ngubeni after it concluded that he was guilty of financial mismanagement and the dereliction of duty. Ngubeni reportedly faced 7 charges related to signing of loans, which were later converted to grants in 3 projects, valued at over 30 million before the board approved was obtained. However, as a result of internal contracts and inadequate processes, Ngubeni was now reinstated. What is more, the NYDA was ordered to pay the cost of the proceedings. The NYDA also announced on Monday that all charges against Chief Operation Officer Magalin Munseni and Executive Manager of Corporate Services Vincent Malunzi has been dropped. The NYDA cannot continue to function under the current conditions, and immediate intervention is needed.
Honourable, your time has expired. The ANC. The ANC is not available. We then proceed, Honourable Member. Press the button and then you can speak.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The African National Congress strongly condemns all acts of terrorism against unarmed and innocent civilians. The recent attacks on innocent people in the capital of Kenya has left dozens of people dead and many wounded, including many South Africans, which should not be allowed to go unpunished. Our position is clear and is guided by the Freedom Charter clarion call that there shall be peace and friendship amongst the nations of the world. The African National Congress remains committed to a peaceful Africa and a world free from terror. human suffering, poverty, and varying degrees of political, social, and economic oppression. As the ANC, we always believe in resolving problems via peaceful diplomacy. Our view is that attacks against civilians can never be justified under any circumstances. The African National Congress supports the call made by the President of Kenya and other leaders and those responsible for these atrocities should be punished for this heinous act of terror. The African National Congress sends its heartfelt condolences to the families of those who lost their lives and injured, and to the general population of Kenya for their pain. Furthermore, we submit our deepest sympathies to the families of other foreign nationals who were killed during the mall attack, and in particular the family of one of our own, Mr. James Thomas. I thank you.
The DA.
Thank you, Speaker. The DA fully supports the call by Labour Minister Mildred Oliphant during an oversight visit last week that farm workers and not union leaders should decide whether to go on strike or not. We are, however, concerned, Minister, of reports of a party politicking at the meeting. Indeed, Minister, it is the workers who have to decide whether they want to strike or not. It is a basic democratic right that they are being denied by union bosses. That is why the DA and most people in this country were shocked and disappointed when ANC members on the Labour Portfolio Committee voted to remove the strike balloting clause in the Labour Relations Amendment Bill. This apparently to curry favour with COSATU. Even more concerning was the fact that the ANC voted for the clearly undemocratic bill in this House. Strike balloting is a basic right that must be restored to all workers in South Africa. The question, Minister, is this: what are you going to do to restore this basic right to the workers? Thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, Speaker. Ten einde te handel met die honger na grond en die ongelijke verdeling daarvan, bly die ANC-regering verbind tot die uitvoering van sy beleide. Ook die herstel van die grondregte van diegene wie se grond oneien is weens gedwonge verskywing en die herverdeling van grond onder die apartheidsregering. Die Mammary gemeenskap in Kaapstad het op Erfenisdag die transportakte ontvang van 4200 hektaar. Boerderygrond wat meer as 2 dekades gelede onder die apartheidsregering van hul grootouers weggeneem is. Die oorhandiging deur die Departement van Landelike Ontwikkeling en Grondhervorming het deel gevorm van die dorpie Mammary sy Erfenisdag feesvieringe. Meer as 2000 huishoudings in die landelike breingemeenskappe van Mammary het in hierdie oordrag voordeel getrek. Ongeveer 500 gesinne is in 1986 gedwing om hulle grond te verkoop om die weg te baan vir die ontwikkeling van Atlantis. In Junie 2010 is 2443 hektaar grond na suksesvolle eis in 2010 aan die Mammary Vereniging vir die gemeenskaplike eiendom teruggegee. Die ANC is trots daarop dat die geskiedenis herskryf is in hierdie gemeenskap wat deur hulle emosies oorweldig is toe hulle grond finaal teruggegee is. Die grond is nou amptelik in hulle naam en hulle het volle toegang tot die grond deur die ANC-regering. Baie dankie.
That concludes member statements. Are there any ministerial responses? No. The Minister of Health, followed by Minister of Labour, and Honourable Rob Davis, Minister Rob Davis, and the last one will be Honourable Minister Nkwinti. Yes, you know, there are only 6 ministerial responses. I know there are more than 6 ministers here, but not all of them will be given a chance to respond. Only 6, the ones I've noted. Proceed, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Indeed, let me follow in the footsteps of my leader, the Speaker of this Parliament, in welcoming the Honorable Ambrosini. Honorable Ambrosini, I take note of what you said and will be eagerly waiting to welcome you to the Department of Health and listen to you attentively. Listening is what we do, for we do not have all the answers. But I wish to emphasize that in the final analysis, human life is in the hands of God. Only He has the final say, and only He can declare what works and what doesn't work. The rest of us are just trying our best. But bit by bit, I believe He reveals to us as human beings the techniques of what works and what doesn't. And these techniques, I want to believe, are revealed to various people amongst us. And these people come in various styles and shapes. Some will use prayer, others will use ordinary water, some will use chemicals and roots, others will use bones and all the other things that human beings use in desperation to find answers. Hence, honorable members, the issue of what works in medicine, in healing human beings, and what doesn't work is a matter of debate. And I believe this debate will go on up to the end of the world.
On that note, Minister, your time has expired. The Minister of Labour.
Ngiyabonga Somlomo. Somlomo ngizophendula imibuzo emibili ka Honorable Mudau and part of umbuzo kaBaba uSikhosana mayelana namalungelo abasebenzi. Kule lizwe lase South Africa sinemthetho ekhona evikela amalungelo abasebenzi, including ama-amendments that are before Parliament. Siyabelieve ukuthi ngaleyo mthetho ijustice ikhona la eMzansi Afrika. Okwesibili kule issue esho umhlonisho Mudau, le issue ye party political. Ngeshwa umhlonisho bengekho emhlanganweni ngesonto. Kwakufanele kube khona ukuze wazi ukuthi kungani ngiphendule ngendlela engiphendule ngayo. If umbuzo upolitical from the audience, I have to respond politically. And I'm not afraid to say the reason why South Africa recognized farm workers is because of the African National Congress. And I will not fail the workers. As long as the African National Congress is still in power, we are going to protect the vulnerable workers in this country. Thank you very much.
Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to respond to the statement by the Honourable Pampiri Bothman. I want to say that early next month, we will be hosting the International Cooperative Alliance World Conference here in Cape Town, actually, and that this will follow a meeting of the BRICS cooperative group. And I think that this is testament to the fact that we are actually strengthening our role and our reputation as a significant country in the promotion of cooperatives. The cooperative amendment bill, which passed through this House some time ago, has now been assented into law by the President, and we're in the process of establishing the institutions which will be created under that law. But as the Honourable Member indicated, we continue to roll out cooperatives all over the country on an increasing scale. The example she gave of our work together with the National Youth Development Agency can be matched with other examples that could be given in Limpopo, in KwaZulu-Natal, in the Eastern Cape, and even in this province here, the Western Cape, where I had the privilege to hand over fishing boats to a number of cooperatives which were formed with the agency of the Department of Trade and Industry. As far as small business is concerned, we've taken the view that we need to focus on promoting much more capable entrepreneurs through the provision of incubation services and also business development services. We've increased the number of incubators supported by the Small Enterprise Development Agency from around 30 to 42, and we've also taken the view that we can't do it all on our own, and we have an incubation support program which has has had 30 approvals. I had the privilege the other day to open the first of these at the Chemical City in Sasolburg. I think that we are on track to provide an increasing support program of value both to cooperatives and to small businesses. This is the work that we've been doing over the last 5 years, and I think that we can see the progress in concrete examples across the country. Thank you very much.
Honourable Minister Kukile Nkwinti, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I wish to thank the Honourable Member of the African National Congress for sharing her observations on Mamre's regaining of land with the House. Mamre, for those who don't know, is a rural part of the city of Cape Town. We drew into this project the city and the province, and they actually are on board. We work together, but we're leading the process because it's such a huge piece of land that we're talking about here. Development of the land is the next step, and the work is on course between ourselves, the community, and the city and the province, which is I'm sure the members of the Democratic Alliance are happy to hear this, that the city is on board on this. However, we need to emphasize the point that this development is not complete. It's not going to be complete, because there is part of the land in Mamre which the city still has to make available, and also because it's for housing, and the city has to provide bulk infrastructure for that. So that's a test that that is facing us as a partnership there. On our part, we are on board to ensure that that community enjoys what has been brought back to it. Thank you very much.
Deputy Minister of Sport.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. Just afford me to thank the Honourable Member of the African National Congress who so eloquently spoke about Orlando Pirates and their achievements. Further elaborated about the achievements which we're all proud of. But Mr. Speaker also afforded me the observation that under notices without motion, we have observed a very sensible motion by the Honourable Chief Whip of the Opposition, therefore ably underscoring the power of sport to unite people of this country, although I doubt he ever supported or watched the game of Orlando Pirates. I thank you.
Deputy Minister Bapela, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Speaker. It was a response to the interventions that we ought to do in the NYDA, that we do welcome the statement by the Honourable Member that indeed, yes, the NYDA has gone through some type of challenges, and there is a program that is unfolding to ensure, therefore, that organization comes and responds as an inspiration to the young people of South Africa, and then all support is needed by all South Africans to ensure that we strengthen the NYDA so that it could respond to the bigger challenges of the youth bulge, what is called the demographic window. And if we invest in it, the dividends are going to be greater, but if you don't, there will be a disaster. And I just want to ensure, therefore, and assure the House that indeed we are attending to those challenges that the NYDA is facing. And indeed, I'm quite confident where I'm sitting that very soon all the problems will be resolved. There are interventions to ensure that it becomes a catalyst organization. Thank you.
Thank you, all members. That concludes ministerial responses. The next item on the order paper is a statement by the Minister of Health on HIV, AIDS, and TB. The Honourable Minister.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members of the House, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, on the 15th of May 2013, in my budget speech, I made a humble request to the Honorable Speaker to provide a date when we launch the HIV counseling and testing campaign, commonly known as the HCT campaign, in Parliament, with the Honorable Speaker and the Honorable Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces taking the lead, followed by leaders of all political parties in these hallowed chambers. This day has arrived today, and I'm very excited about that. Honorable Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to be here today at this extremely important and powerful place in the country to launch the HCT campaign for members of Parliament of the Republic of South Africa, as well as all those who work here. This campaign was launched this morning by the Deputy President of the country and the Chairperson of SANAC, Honorable Kgalema Motlanthe. Since the launch of the National HCT campaign by the President of South Africa on the 25th of April 2010, more than 18 million people have been tested for HIV and a significant number screened for TB, as well as for other chronic diseases, such as diabetes mellitus and hypertension. Although the campaign was successful, as acknowledged by such bodies as the UN AIDS, there are still a number of sectors in the country that have not yet been reached. The National Development Plan, Vision 2030, that has been adopted by this House, argues that for us to produce positive results of developmental health in the country, it suggested the following. Number one, that life expectancy in South Africa must be raised to at least 70 years. Number two, that we must ensure the generation of under-20s, which is largely free of HIV and AIDS. Number three, that we need to reduce the burden of disease. And number four, that we need to achieve an infant mortality rate of less than 20 deaths per 1,000 live births, including an under 5 mortality rate of less than 30 per 1,000. However, Honorable Speaker, unless we deal decisively with the HIV and AIDS pandemic, none of the dreams of the National Development Plan will ever be attainable, because the biggest contributor to most of this problem is the HIV and AIDS pandemic. There is therefore a need to encourage all South Africans to test for HIV and to be screened for TB annually through creation of an enabling environment for HCT. This is why we have decided at an earlier SANAC plenary meeting that the presidency will relaunch the HCT campaign in the country. This relaunch will take place in the Khertsibande district in the Mpumalanga province on the 1st of December 2013. That will be World AIDS Day. Today's launch is just a build-up to that countrywide launch. The rationale for choosing Khertsibande for the relaunch of the HCT campaign is that Khertsibande district is now officially the district with the highest prevalence rate of HIV/AIDS in the country. Along with the relaunch of the HCT campaign, we will launch a national medical male circumcision campaign at the same time. As you know, medical male circumcision is a critical strategy to decrease the HIV/AIDS infection, as demonstrated in the number of clinical trials in South Africa and other countries on the continent. The services that are being offered at the same time with the HIV counseling and testing campaign today in Parliament and in December in Mpumalanga will include blood pressure monitoring or screening for diabetes mellitus, the body mass index screening, which, as you know, has become a crisis in the country and in this Parliament too, the TB symptomatic screening and TB diagnosis using the gene expert machine. Medical male circumcision services are also available for those who want access to this service. And honorable members, those who need to do it and have not yet done it, we are inviting them, and I can also help you because I'm involved in that sector also. All those who test positive for HIV, AIDS, and TB or other non-communicable diseases will be referred to appropriate health facilities for further management and care. The National Strategic Plan for HIV/AIDS, Sexually Transmitted Infections and TB suggests that every South African should test annually, and I want to emphasize the word every South African, regardless of age, regardless of your status or your station in life. Today's event will contribute significantly towards scaling up of HCT in the country by showing everyone that there's a strong political leadership in the country that support the war against HIV and AIDS. The HCT campaign is an appropriate and powerful vehicle for social mobilization on HIV and AIDS and TB. In addition, the HCT campaign is very important as it is the entry point on HIV prevention, treatment, care, and support. It facilitates provision of condoms, male and female, to every person who receives HIV counseling testing. Used accurately and consistently, as you know, condoms play a crucial role in prevention of HIV, AIDS, and other STIs, as well as unplanned pregnancies. As we saw, the President launched the HCT campaign in April 2010. HCT contributed to the reduction of stigma related to HIV and AIDS and TB. HCT can also help us to identify and reach the most at-risk population as articulated in the National Strategic Plan 2012 to 2016. So it is important that members of Parliament must take the lead for everybody in society to see that this disease is a disease of everybody. It can even enter into the most powerful places on earth, and so that people must not fear to test. Since the launch of the HCT campaign in 2010, several sectors have been mobilized to launch the HCT campaign. This includes the industrial sector, financial sector, mining, farming, village sector, public sector, correctional services, sports, entertainment, etc. We also partnered with the Rotary Club to include the HCT and screening for TB as part of the Rotary's Health Week. In the past, they used to have Health Week without this, and we are very happy that they've been included. We see the participation of leadership and prominent members of society in the HCT campaign as a powerful message to all people of South Africa and a powerful vehicle for social mobilization to address issues of stigma and discrimination, ensuring early access to care. We are committed to eliminate the exclusions of persons living with HIV, AIDS, and TB in the country. I also wish to use this opportunity to communicate to the people of South Africa about the government's commitment to expand to highly effective ARV drugs that are easier to administer. As you are aware, earlier this year in April, on the 8th of April, we launched the introduction of the fixed dose combination, or FDCs, as a clear demonstration that the government is serious about simplifying treatment in order to improve compliance and adherence to treatment. Testing HIV positive is no longer a death sentence, and it's just like any other chronic illness. It can be treated, and people who are HIV positive can live long and healthy lives. The fixed dose combination pill contains the same 3 drugs that are used for the first-line treatment, but the fixed dose combination is administered only once a day, reducing the pill burden and making adherence simpler to patients. At the launch of the FDC, I mentioned why this was important. Number 1, the fixed dose combination pill is simple to administer and very highly effective. Patients take 1 fixed dose combination pill daily. Using FDC will improve compliance and adherence to treatment, thus keeping patients virologically suppressed and reducing the risk of developing drug resistance to ARVs, as well as transmission to those that are HIV negative. Patients on TB and HIV treatment will have a reduced pill burden and therefore have improved compliance to treatment and fewer side effects. And lastly, mothers who are HIV positive and breastfeeding can get an FDC pill, which will reduce the risk of HIV transmission during breastfeeding. Let me say a few words, Honorable Speaker, about TB, because 80% of the people who are HIV positive who unfortunately passes away are actually killed by TB. Secondly, there are 22 countries in the world that carry 80% of the TB of the world. And unfortunately, 6 of those 22 countries are in SADC, and South Africa is one of them. All 5 BRICS countries are counted among these 22. And 60% of all the people who have got MDR in the world are found in the 5 BRICS countries. In South Africa, the highest prevalence rate of TB is found in correctional services. It is #1 in the country. And that is why the Deputy President, as the leader of SANAC, because now it includes TB, launched on the World TB Day, the 24th of March, a campaign in one of the correctional services facilities, that's Portsmouth Prison, where he launched a campaign for us to have all the inmates screened before they are admitted to correctional service facilities. Thereafter, they will be screened 2 times per year and be put on treatment. And thereafter, we'll get the list of all those who have tested positive for TB from the correctional services. We'll follow up their families and screen them, because this screening process, honorable members, is very important. We chose Portsmouth Prison, as you know. That's where Tata Madiba also contracted TB. So it was chosen symbolically. I'm happy to report that all 12,000 inmates in Portsmouth, we have completed screening them for TB. We've used gene expert on them. And out of the 12,000 that have been screened, 176 are now on treatment. And I also want to mention to you that the issue of screening population is important. We know that in South Africa, 405,000 families have got a member with TB. Starting in 2011, in March, we put up 18 teams to go and visit these families. And 150,000 of those families have been visited, where we screen the whole family, include especially children with the gene expert machine. And guess what? We found that 3,000 people were having TB, but they never knew about it until that screening was done. So the issue of screening is very important, because you might not have symptoms, even though we know that the following symptoms are important: coughing for longer than 2 weeks, chest pains, unintentionally losing weight, and sweating at night. And again, with HIV test, sputum test on the gene expert can also be very helpful, and that's why we have also brought the gene expert machine here. Honorable Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, let me also say a few words about non-communicable diseases. An honorable member of this House have just sat down speaking emotionally about cancer. As you know, it is one of the non-communicable diseases, together with high blood pressure and chronic heart diseases, diabetes mellitus, and chronic lung diseases like asthma. These are the new threats to the world. Non-communicable diseases are diseases of lifestyle. As our lifestyles change, so do these disease patterns in our communities. We do not know the cause of these non-communicable diseases, but we know that commonly there are 4 risk factors. That is the risk factor of smoking, risk factor of alcohol, risk factor of poor diet or wrong diet, and risk factor of lack of physical activity. Government has taken a number of steps to assist by, for example, passing tough regulations on the sale and advertising of tobacco products, limiting the salt content of processed foods, and regulating the use of trans fatty acids. We are now looking forward to keeping advertising of alcohol. We know that there are those who are fighting us because they believe we are playing a game here. We are not playing a game. We are faced with a titanic battle here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's believed that long after HIV/AIDS is gone, and it may do so in 30 years, the non-communicable disease will never go away as long as human beings are alive, because of this, the fact that they are lifestyle diseases. So it means we have to be very careful in controlling non-communicable diseases. So when we put caps, like the ban on advertising of alcohol, we're not doing so because we want to punish people. We are doing so because the world is faced with a disaster. It is believed by United Nations that if drastic steps are not taken, in the next decade or two, many countries will simply not be able to carry their health budget because of the burden of treatment that the countries will be carrying. And honorable members, just imagine sitting here in this parliament, going through budgets and realizing that in order for human beings to continue living, you must cut budgets from all the other sectors, including education, housing, social development, just to keep people alive. I'm not trying to threaten you. I'm not trying to mobilize for a higher budget for health, but I'm mobilizing for something that we know it works: prevention of diseases and promotion of health. And if you prevent them, you won't need a lot of money. So when we say we want to put a regulation to cap this and that, and people keep on calling us nanny states or making us them children, etc., we want you as leaders to understand. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, before sitting down, I mentioned earlier to Honorable Ambrosini about the issues that work and don't work. The first one that works, as I've said, is to avoid the risk factors. We are aware that this does not necessarily mean everybody who is ill has been involved in these risk factors, but a large number of people are, and this has been scientifically proved. That is the first thing. The second thing is, if we have to treat, we must use agreed upon scientific methods and protocols. And these scientific methods and protocols are agreed upon annually by the World Health Organization through the World Health Assembly that takes place in Geneva every May, where all the ministers of health in the country get together for the whole week, all the scientists, civil society and other activists, to make policies. And up to so far, we only get our policies from the World Health Organization. So when I follow those policies, honorable members, do understand that we are following science. This is the only method we know now until something that may come in the future. But at the moment, these are the only methods that we can follow. So, Honorable Speaker, I would like to once more urge everyone to get tested in these next 2 days for HIV and AIDS, for TB, for hypertension, for body mass index, for cholesterol, and all the other ailments that are threatening our lives. And please understand that this is not a once-off thing. It's a launch this year, but we are hoping that you'll do it every year. And we are hoping, with the leadership of the Deputy President and the presiding officers in this Parliament and the leaders of political parties and the chief whips, when we leave this Parliament today, we'll extend a similar campaign to all the provincial legislatures in the country, from there to all the district municipalities where the mayors must lead. The district mayors must lead the campaign together with leaders of political parties there. From there, we'll go to all the local municipalities where the local mayors must also lead. Last week, I had the honor and opportunity of addressing the bishops from various denominations in this country. I also urge them that, like Parliament, they must choose a day on which all the churches are going to test, so that on that particular day, church-going people can know that it is their opportunity to test. Only in this way, Honorable Speaker, will we be able to say the ideals and the dreams mentioned in the National Development Plan of South Africa's living up to 70 years, of us having an HIV-free generation, of us reducing maternal and child mortality, and of us reducing the burden of diseases that our country and indeed the whole continent is carrying. It's the only way that will happen. In conclusion, I would like to thank the Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Chairperson of National Council and Provinces, and members of Parliament for taking the lead and participating. They can only gain one thing, that the country will be saved from this scourge. I thank you.
I thank the Honourable Minister. I now wish to invite the Honourable Robinson to the floor.
Honourable Speaker, Ministers and Members, we welcome the launch of the HIV counselling and testing campaign here in Parliament. It sets the scene for focusing on the National Strategic Plan on HIV/AIDS, TB and STIs. We support your realistic approach to healthcare. It is an acknowledgement that we have finally moved away from the terrible days of AIDS denialism that robbed so many South Africans of their lives, of mothers and fathers, that led to AIDS orphans as left as heads of households, bereft of parental guidance and support, forced to fend for themselves. I remember little children being excluded from schools and creches, of people losing their jobs, of being reduced to the status of outcasts for fear of contamination from the mysterious disease. The discrimination and stigma was enormous and led to great hardship, fear and isolation. Poverty and hunger increased, and the needs of the people became desperate. It became obvious that ARVs should be rolled out through all the provinces, not just in the Western Cape, where good results were being obtained and lives were being saved. In 2000, the global community signed the historical United Nations Millennium Goals, acknowledging that an effective response to HIV/AIDS needed to be taken, setting it within the context of a broader development agenda. MDG 6 called for strong action to halt and try to reverse the AIDS pandemic. In 2015, the deadline for the MDGs is close now, about 900 days away, and we still have a long way to go to reach the targets that were set in 2000. We were to reduce sexual transmission of HIV/AIDS by 50%, to eliminate HIV infections amongst children and reduce maternal deaths. There has been an improvement in the former, but unfortunately there has not been sufficient improvement in maternal deaths, often due to other healthcare factors. We were to halve the deaths due to tuberculosis amongst people living with HIV by 2015. In 2000, we lacked crucial medical treatment and preventative measures for HIV/AIDS, but now, due to international support and medical research, we have made much progress. We have the tools to end the AIDS epidemic. However, we still fall far short of eliminating gender inequality. Domestic violence and gender-based abuse are known to contribute to the vulnerability of women to HIV and AIDS. A recent review found that women who have experienced intimate partner violence are 50% more likely to be living with HIV/AIDS. Should we not make programs available to integrate HIV and sexual and reproductive health services and education at clinics and schools? Should we not be putting more resources into engaging men and boys in constructive programs to teach them about building solid, loving relationships built on respect and consideration rather than power and exploitation? Women and girls need to be encouraged to stand up for their rights so that they can be protected from HIV/AIDS. Far too many women are still subservient and subject to patriarchal attitudes where they have no choice about relationships, about safe sex practices, or the need for family planning. They are regarded as mere chattels, sexual objects to be used and abused. How much funding is government making available for safe havens, tutuzela centres, for shelters for women and children who are victims of rape and abuse? We lack sufficient social workers, counsellors, psychologists and psychiatrists. If government is serious about reducing the burden of HIV/AIDS, we need to look at these matters holistically. As leaders of the nation, we all have a responsibility to set an example of how to conduct our lives, how to treat our partners with respect and consideration, not to engage in casual, exploitative relationships. Moral regeneration is not a program for a particular occasion, but it's how the leaders of our state and our nation conduct their relationships every day. And now, some 13 years later, South Africa is ready to focus on the National Strategic Plan on HIV/AIDS, TB and STDs. We are fortunate to have received 3 billion rand from the UN Global Fund to support the country's program. We have better resources now. We have the benefit of research and experience. I trust that the HIV/AIDS Portfolio Committee will be reinvigorated in the next term and will serve as a catalyst for action in supporting the current ministry in undoing the legacy of denialism. We need to focus on the general wellness of the nation, including mental health, and encourage people to take personal responsibility for their sexual practices so that HIV/AIDS can be eradicated. I agree, we need to promote general wellness, but this we need to do together, and we all need to set the example. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Khanar.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Ministers and members who are here, Congress of the People acknowledges that government has done a lot in the long drawn-out fight against HIV/AIDS. Their provision of antiretroviral combined with education and HTC provide a platform for people living with HIV/AIDS to come forth for assistance. The role of TAC in the destigmatization of HIV and AIDS cannot go unnoticed. The problem with HIV and AIDS and TB diseases is that they are diseases without borders. As South Africa, we won't deal decisively with the problem without cooperation and coordination with SADC countries as a start and Africa in general. Whilst the research for medication continues, it is important to know that education can play a vital role in ensuring that we have an HIV-free generation in the near future. The campaign should also be driven by non-governmental organizations and government to ensure that we reach all corners of South Africa, encourage people to change their lifestyle. South African National AIDS Council, SANAC, and the Department of Health are mostly seen as the only bodies waging the fight against HIV/AIDS. And this is something we have got to work towards countering so that all of us can be part of the battle against HIV/AIDS. We believe that it is important for a nation to move towards removing such a misunderstanding and encourage all sectors, including business, non-governmental organizations, and all political parties should join hands in intensifying the fight against HIV/AIDS. The most important measure to indicate success in the fight against AIDS, against the pandemic, will always be the reduction of deaths, the increase in life expectancy, and the improvement in the standard of living of the people, especially the poor. We cannot talk about HIV/AIDS without talking about the conditions under which our people live. Although HIV/AIDS does not have any class, it is not a secret that it severely affects the poor. Therefore, social upliftment becomes vital in the fight against HIV/AIDS and TB. We need to ensure that there is a provision of basic services, including clean water, proper sanitation, and a violent-free society in the fight against HIV/AIDS. COPE is aware that from time to time, there are disturbing reports about people living with HIV not receiving their ARVs due to different reasons, including inefficiency, corruption, and general lack of skills of people employed in our clinics, hospitals, and the provincial health departments. To cope, corruption is also a problem in the fight against HIV/AIDS because it denies people on the ARV program a constitutional right to free health, and their health is severely compromised. The chronic stockouts of medicine also compromises the health of people living with HIV. They become prone to drug resistance. It is also unfortunate that the funding to sustain the fight against HIV/AIDS depends to a large extent on the Americans. When the PEPFAR announced that it was discontinuing to fund a number of African projects, the fight against HIV/AIDS suffered a severe blow, and Africa was indeed petrified. Once you rely on a foreign nation for the health care of your fellow citizens, you are failing to provide them with their constitutional right to free health care and the right to life. The other problem is in the fight against HIV/AIDS in South Africa is that corporate citizens become citizens only when there is a free publicity for them to benefit. They are more concerned about public relations rather than sustainable fight against HIV/AIDS. We should therefore ask ourselves, what contributions have have they actually made in the fight against HIV/AIDS? What sustainable programs have they embarked upon to ensure that the fight against HIV/AIDS takes place within workplace? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Sheng.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Your Excellency, the Deputy President, Kulua, Honorable Minister of Health, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Deputy Ministers, Honorable colleagues. Since we as leaders in our country first accepted the responsibility of speaking openly about HIV and AIDS, despite the traditional taboo of discussing issues of sexuality, and in truth, because of this taboo, South Africa has taken some faltering steps forward in fighting HIV/AIDS pandemic. If one looks at where we began and where we are now, one might be tempted to talk in terms of giant strides that have been taken. But I talk about faltering steps because clearly we could have done so much more and so much faster. Lives have been lost to this battle simply because government was slow to respond appropriately. I served in the cabinet when the head of state and the head of government was in denial about HIV and AIDS, and when his Minister of Health was in denial about HIV and AIDS. When I first spoke at the funeral of my son, Prince Nerusu Zulu Benedict Buthelezi, in April 2004, and lamented that he had lost his long war with HIV and AIDS, the space to talk about this opened up. I spoke again in August that year when I lost my daughter because of HIV and AIDS, Princess Mandis Bukagonge Buthelezi. A few months later, His Excellency, President Nelson Mandela, lost his eldest son, Makgatho Mandela, and he too found the courage to say that his son had succumbed to AIDS. Together we called on our nation to break the silence and destroy the stigma which the minister has spoken about and prevent us as a nation from talking about this disease. That message is still being carried by leaders in our communities and leaders in our nation. And this is still the message that will turn the tide on this pandemic. We need to break the silence, colleagues, and speak the truth. I therefore welcome the campaign of HIV and AIDS testing and counseling, which is launched in Parliament this afternoon, and I support the many efforts being made across the spectrum of our society to encourage people to get tested, to accept responsibility for their health, and make the right lifestyle adjustments that will see the spread of HIV infection arrested. This is a battle we can win. Indeed, we are encouraged by the message from government that we are already tasting victory, Minister. How wonderful it is to hear that our government has saved hundreds of thousands of lives by providing antiretrovirals to mothers and newborn babies. It has happened just as the IFP had said it would. In 2002, when the IFP was at the helm in KwaZulu-Natal, our Premier, Dr. Mtshali, ordered the rollout of antiretrovirals to mothers, and the ANC-led government at that time refused as amicus curiae, friend of the court, proving that it could be done. Proven right once again, about which we dare not play politics of opposition, for opposition's sake. In this case, too, this HIV and AIDS and TB, a competent person like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Efforts by the Minister and the Department to encourage the nation to know their status and will be participating in the HIV. It's our duty as responsible. HIV/AIDS epidemic in South Africa has taken a huge issue rather than a health issue and missed opportunity 6 to 10% since 2006. In 2005, 37 to 39% of child deaths were attributable to AIDS. increased efforts and a commitment to preventing mother-to-child HIV transmission, plus expanded availability of antiretroviral therapies, has resulted in substantial mortality decreases during the past 5 years. The ACDP congratulates the Minister and all role players on their efforts in the progress made to date. Now, we note, however, that although the proportion of under 5 deaths due to age has fallen between 11 and 24%, South Africa is still not on track to achieve the MDG of a 2/3 reduction in under 5 mortality by 2015. But on the positive side, if current progress continues, the nation could meet this goal by 2020. We have come a long way and must not lose focus now, as we still have a long way to go. At the same time, this is something we can be grateful for and proud of. Young people are particularly susceptible, of course, to HIV infections, and in many instances they carry the burden of caring for family members living with HIV/AIDS. With a population of young people that is expected to double to 281 million by 2050, concerns have been raised that young people are not getting the opportunity to develop the cognitive and other skills required to successfully transition into adulthood. HIV knowledge levels among young people remain below 40%. The UN agency tasked with controlling the virus that causes AIDS warned on Monday that people in several African countries are using fewer condoms and having sex with more than one partner, threatening efforts to fight HIV, naming Burkina Faso, Congo, Côte d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Gabon, Guyana, Rwanda, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. On the other hand, people working in Uganda to reduce HIV/AIDS have reported hearing 17-year-olds confidently saying they want to stay virgins until they meet the right girl. They attribute this to the good work being done by teachers, encouraging young people to abstain. They say songs are taught in schools which incorporate messages about HIV/AIDS and a strong ABC message, songs of hope and enthusiasm for Uganda and their future. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Dudley. Honorable Judicial. Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is 2013. We are still faced with a serious epidemic, HIV/AIDS. But, Mr. Speaker, much has been accomplished since world leaders met at the 2006 United Nations General Assembly. We have to accept the fact that AIDS is an incurable disease and sexually transmitted. These had better results to be achieved by training of health personnel, development of national guidelines, and establishment of supporting data gathering systems that we see now of late. With this, UCDP is saying, well done, Mr. Minister, you are doing your best. Though there still remains much to be covered, services have improved consistently over the years in terms of quality, including availability of ARV at affordable cost, having one capsule instead of many, having more negative babies from HIV mothers, including home-based care and adherence support. But we feel that there are some loopholes. Like greater attention must also be devoted to those who are harder to reach, including rural populations like Kokole, Bonabona, Chue, Manja, Matateng, who make up substantial proportion of those currently with low access to have HIV services. Groups at high risk of HIV infection, such as sex workers, long-distance truck drivers, and migrant workers should also be a major focus of attention. Effective education and AIDS awareness are vital prevention to the spread of HIV. The encouragement of safe behavior at the workplace and in the community is very important. One other thing is, please, parents, patients, everybody, let's stop this thing. allowing of making drugs with RTVs. It's high time that communities should be taught to be responsible of their families. The other thing is, South Africa is a Christian country. Communities, let's have a special day to pray for this disease. God is good and will answer our prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Tikobo.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, Honorable Members, AZAPO welcomes the launch of the ACT campaign in Parliament. HIV/AIDS and non-communicable diseases are the biggest threat to human development. While countries, including South Africa, invest a lot of money in human resource development, HIV/AIDS reverses the gains by attacking the very human capital that has been developed. AZAPO will support all efforts to combat the spread of HIV/AIDS and other diseases. An AIDS-free generation, a healthy nation, will mean that the money and other resources that go towards the treatment and care of people living with HIV/AIDS will be channeled towards other developmental needs of the country. Honorable Minister, we will join the campaign to encourage South Africans to test for HIV and non-communicable diseases. We will join the queue of those who want to be tested. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Sekhala Deswai.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, Honorable Members of Parliament. It always gives me a great pleasure and a feeling of humility to address this House. This time it is even more in that I'm given the opportunity once more to speak on a very important matter that has always become synonymous with the health of the people of South Africa. Honorable members, it is almost 41 months from the day the country and the world witnessed the greatest launch of the health counseling and testing campaign in South Africa in Gauteng province. This is the step that set South Africa on the path of no return, as the Minister of Health and the President took a bold and ambitious step of launching one of the biggest HCT campaign that South Africa and the world have never seen before. It is this launch that got the whole world talking, because the country moved from denial to reality. It moved from debate to action. It moved from argument to consensus on the prevention of diseases, especially HIV/AIDS. The launch reshaped the health agenda of South Africa insofar as all preventable disease, especially HIV, is concerned. With this launch, South Africa shaped the agenda of the world, because for the first time, people realized that it is possible to test, and that the head of state, in the person of President Jacob Zuma, led from the front by testing and declaring results of the HIV testing. This great leader of our people used the opportunity to demystify the myths and fears around testing. The President truly lived the slogan of this government that together we can do more. And he went further to demonstrate, together with him at the front, the country can do more. As members of Parliament, we go to our village, not only for constituency work, but to join men and women who live there. We have seen the way our people are ravaged by the preventable diseases such as HIV, tuberculosis, hypertension, diabetic mellitus, etc. We have seen helpless and young men and women suffer from this illness, and some have lost their sight, Others lost their limbs. Some are on insulin and others are on DOT support, and many young lives have been lost due to HIV/AIDS. We have buried many people to the point where it is common for people to ask the question, who is next? We cannot allow a situation where people die from this preventable and at times curable diseases. With this launch, Honorable Member, we are taking a step that will be a lasting legacy for generations to come. This is the best thing that it can help to define this how, what this house stands for. This house must be an embodiment of transparency, and by doing this publicly, we are showing that we can be transparent even with our own private life. In this way, we will earn the respect of our electorate. I am certain that Honorable Member knows how fulfilling it is to know your status. It is more fulfilling to know where you stand so that you can take steps to either prevent new diseases or take steps to live positively and take care of yourself, not to complicate for the disease that you may have been having already. Honorable Member, the benefit of HCT are in many folds, and a few that come to mind are early detection, assist early treatment, and in that way, there will be zero to complication. Those who know their illness also know their treatment, and they know how to live with their illness. If people know their status, they know how to avoid any action that may complicate their life. They know better than those that have not been tested. Testing of any disease is a powerful tool that people use to ensure that they stay healthy, and those who are found to be having a disease of one kind or another, they live better. The benefit of the testing is that members will be more empowered, and it is better and in a better position to know where they stand with a particular disease. This testing is one of many ways of ensuring that the vision of the Department of Health of long and healthy life is attained. Remember an old adage that a journey of many miles starts with a single step. The simple and single step that look very insignificant will go a long way in ensuring that we are also part of the brigade that take a vow that a long and healthy life is not a dream but attainable. Honorable Deputy Speaker, as we are going to launch this campaign, I am more than confident that this will liberate many of us who thought that we are healthy and yet we are not. It will set us free from fear, free from poor management of our life, free from looking for solution in wrong places, free from ever wondering what is happening with our body. As we test today, and perhaps even tomorrow, and many other days to come, we will be freeing ourselves, and we will also be setting someone who looks up to us free, because they want to see the leaders go first before they follow. Honorable Deputy Speaker, perhaps we should make this a 6 months exercise so that we can be sure that we stay healthy. And those who have one disease and another can seek help while there is, where there is still time. It is what has driven this government that there is a need to invest in the prevention of diseases and promotion of good health. And thereby we will keep many of our people out of hospital because they shall know ahead of time that they need to be cared. It is my sincere and very firm view that the health system of this country will stand and fall on prevention of diseases and promotion of health. As such, when we test today, we are on the path of preventing diseases. This is what the ANC as a ruling party saw long ago. That unless we prevent diseases, life expectancy will not improve. Why don't we adopt an attitude that says, whenever we talk to the South African, we encourage them to test. Whenever we greet people, we say, I have tested, have you? I'm saying to you, I have tested, have you? When we can test, we can lead the testing in even our constituency to see that what the minister have said is really taking into place. But remember, while you are doing it as a leader for the people to follow, you are also doing it for yourself, for your own sake, for the sake of your family, for the sake of your children. Your family love you, your community love you. So know as I do that better life, long life, healthy life and great life begins with you. The time is now, and now is the time. In conclusion, as members of parliament, we should now start talking very vocally about moral regeneration, moral renewal, behavioral change as a tool to fight HIV/AIDS. We are not supposed to come and stand here and try to score political points. When we talk about HIV, when we talk about testing, we are all together as South African. Therefore, we must take this forward and let us all go to test. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. That concludes party responses to the statement. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry on Lotteries Amendment Bill.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the second order.
Second reading debate, Lotteries Amendment Bill.
Honorable Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill before the House today is the culmination of a process of reform that was initiated at the start of this administration. The need for such reform was underscored by the reality that at that time there was something like 3 billion rand of unallocated and undistributed lotteries funds. Through a combination of administrative reforms and also of changes in the secondary legislation, the regulations, I'm happy to say that we have no such unallocated funds sitting in the National Lotteries Distribution Trust Fund today. But the fact is that the applications for lotteries funding have more than doubled since then. And we have, as a result, seen a necessity to come and to Parliament to request changes in the legislation to make the process of allocating lotteries funds much more efficient. The bill before the House today is intended to address the following problems, among others. There's been an absence of a quorum for adjudication of by the part-time distributing agencies. This has been because some of the part-time members of those distribution agencies have been unavailable to attend the ever-growing number of meetings that they're required to participate in. There have also been a number of recusals of members of the distribution agencies because they recuse themselves when they themselves have an interest in a particular application. There have been some challenges in trying to demarcate the relationship between the National Lotteries Board and the distribution agencies, arising from insufficient clarity of the respective roles. And there's been inadequate structure and capacity in the National Lotteries Board to carry out its mandate effectively. The bill that's before us is the result of considerable consultation with all affected stakeholders in the lotteries family. The bill will, in the first instance, establish a new entity called the National Lotteries Commission. This is to distinguish between the institution and the board. There will still be a board, but there will be the appointment of a commissioner, and the institution itself will be known as the National Lotteries Commission. The functions of the National Lotteries Commission have been clarified and enhanced to realize a greater impact in communities through proactive and application-based measures. The amendment bill also provides for the appointment of distribution agencies as full-time bodies, and this will, we believe, obviate the problems arising from the lack of quorums in this respect. The distribution agencies will account administratively to the board whilst maintaining their adjudication independence in the same way that bid adjudication committees function in various public and business setups. The Minister will continue to appoint the distribution agency members who will on a day-to-day basis and administratively report to the board. The full-time nature of the appointment will eradicate delays in adjudication due to lack of quorums. Conflict of interest will now be properly managed by providing that members of distribution agencies will no longer be allowed to be a member of those agencies and at the same time play an active role in organizations that apply for grants. Quite simply, if you are involved in that, you don't just stand aside at a particular meeting, you actually cannot any longer serve as a member of a distribution agency. The amendment bill creates an internal review mechanism to enable applicants who are aggrieved to have that appeal expeditiously dealt with. And there are some other measures that clarify the role of the minister in this regard. Let me refer, in a little bit of time I've got left, to the controversial item. That was clause 13. Let me say that the reality is that there is a handful of international companies that have the technology and the capacity to operate national lotteries worldwide. In South Africa, what has happened is that we form consortia with local companies, and these bid for the lottery license. What we are saying in clause 13, quite simply, is that if this process does not yield us sufficient in terms of the local procurement of goods and services, does not transfer of skills and technology, or compliance with broad-based black economic empowerment, the minister may decide to choose the option, which a number of countries do, of having a public entity run the national lottery and then contracting one of those international operators as a technology partner. I want to thank the Portfolio Committee for all the work which they've done, and I commend this bill to the House. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Phelps.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Deputy President, Honourable Members of this House, colleagues and comrades. Yes, indeed, the Lotteries Amendment Bill is a bill we have all been waiting for. Beneficiaries, the board, the Portfolio Committee, and the people of our country, South Africa. I want to believe that we all share noble ideas and a commitment to end poverty, or simply to make a positive difference in someone's life, in all our people's lives. the small amount of money that is necessary to buy a lotto ticket can and does contribute to this ideal of improving people's lives. This bill will make it easier for the intended beneficiaries, as the Minister was explaining, to benefit from many issues, the proactive funding, the more permanent staff that would be to assist with things, and also to remove the confusion that did exist in the bill, in what is the Act currently, and clarifying the role of the Minister. Indeed, issues of good governance are factored in, but more importantly, accountability and transparency. Just as we use taxation as an instrument to redistribute the wealth of our country and share the revenue equitably, so too this bill, the National Lotteries Amendment Bill, seeks to underpin those principles that are captured in the Freedom Charter. The Department of Trade and Industry has reaffirmed this call for social and economic justice in its comprehensive application to this piece of legislation. And indeed, we must thank you, Dr. Rob Davies, Minister of Trade and Industry. You had the courage and the conviction over a 4.5-year journey to finally bring us this bill, a bill that will make that difference. Assisted by the DG and his team, Mr. Lionel October, we truly thank you. But I want personally to thank the committee for truly unpacking this, scrutinizing it, and together with the department, we have produced a piece of legislation which we believe will address the outstanding challenges we have been facing since this was recognized in a review mechanism conducted before we online with what the Portfolio Committee raised in 2009, even through court action. There was a need to professionalize the grant making and to bring about a foot with many of these. But I think one of the most important things was providing for the... When we look at the Commission, I must say that today, now that we have a professional and clear functions of the Commission, the composition has already been dealt with, I'm very pleased to say that this particular bill will plug a lot of the loopholes that we currently have here. Secondly, when we look at gambling, but that we also need to recognize that is to make profits for the shareholders. Lottery, and it reflected in this bill today, its objective, yes, may be to maximize revenue through the small amount that arises from the purchase of tickets is essentially extremely difficult, as the Honourable Kwabasa will be explaining in detail. The House, the constituents, and indeed many of them can indeed be addressed. For facilitating the discussions and the improvement in policy in this direction, which it did with a number of stakeholders in dialogue and speaking to them about how best we can do things. And this process of consultation has, as we would expect, public participation has brought about an even more effective and sharper instrument. Another issue which we must point out here is that the categories that are now being addressed can be broadened through, of course, not ring-fencing the issue. And instead of one area or sector of society benefiting at the expense of the other, you will have professionals at work evaluating and assessing where the best or most constructive good will arise from it. But we must also remember that the kind of grants that are made through this bill are not intended to replace the work of the public budget or indeed not intended to replace the normal raising of revenue by institutions and individuals in this regard. I would like to say something which I believe is very important, and that is that the ANC government, through harnessing the positive aspects of the Lotto, does so informed by its principles of redistribution and reconciliation. And indeed, I wanted to just, and I'm sure the Honourable Buthelezi would also appreciate this, indicate that ubushlobo betu nezwi lonke. In this way, our humanity is more expressed when we approach the intention of the Lotto, which is to try and contribute to the improvement of the lives of all our people, especially the most vulnerable. The ANC supports this legislation, but I must add at this time, I want to thank all members of the committee for their constructive input and for the many hours they devote to this committee. Way after most of Parliament is in darkness. I thank you all.
Thank you, Honourable Fox. Honourable Hill-Lewis.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The Democratic Alliance originally welcomed the tabling of the National Lotteries Amendment Bill, which the Department introduced following years of sustained criticism of the way in which the Lotto was being managed by civil society, the DA, and the general public. The criticism focused around a fundamental lack of transparency throughout the entire Lotto operation, a complicated and unresponsive grant applications process, alleged corruption, conflicts of interest, and political bias. It was in 2010 when the DA, in fact, introduced a private members' bill to fix many of these problems. It was the Honourable Smuller. This bill was summarily rejected on the basis that similar legislation would soon be introduced by the executive. Well, nearly 3 years later, the Minister of Trade and Industry finally tabled the National Lotteries Amendment Bill. And, Deputy Speaker, for the most part, this bill is a good one. We support the following aspects of the bill: the introduction of much stricter rules for who can be appointed to the board and the commission, as well as the all-important distributing agencies. The introduction of much stricter rules around conflict of interests, who can adjudicate applications, who can apply for grants, who may and may not receive grants, and a mandatory 24-month cooling off period. The inclusion of an appeal mechanism to allow applicants who have been declined or who have information that grants have been made or are being used corruptly to appeal these decisions. This will make blowing the whistle on suspected corruption in the Lotto easier and more effective. And lastly, the creation of full-time distributing agencies that will be able to deal with applications much more speedily, greatly reducing the 3 to 6 month waiting time that applicants currently have to wait for an answer. And, Deputy Speaker, if the bill had ended there, we would have been supporting it wholeheartedly today, as I think would most of organised civil society. However, in our view, the bill is entirely ruined by the inclusion of the controversial Section 13A, which the Minister made reference to, which allows the Minister to license any organ of state to run the lottery for a period of 8 years, with an optional renewal of 2 years, effectively 10 years together. It's helpful for this House to recap briefly the arguments made in committee on this issue. The department began very specifically by arguing that they needed to allow a state organ to run the Lotto for a brief period as a stopgap, only in the event that a suitably qualified private sector licensee could not be found, and that the continued operation of the Lotto so that it could be guaranteed. That is why the bill, as originally tabled, contained an allowance for a period of 24 months for this stopgap. in which time the department would need to issue a new request for proposals, receive and evaluate bids, and appoint a new licensee. This argument, honourable members, was completely reasonable and the DA had no objection. The second scenario outlined was when the appointed licensee at some point in their licence period is unable to honour their contract, as happened in 2007 when the lottery was shut down for 6 months. Again, the original bill asked for a period of 24 months to fix this, by allowing a state organ to run the lotto temporarily while a new private licensee was sought and appointed. Again, we had no objection. But what was clear, Deputy Speaker, was that at no stage was the argument made that what the government wanted was a straight state-run lotto for a full period of 10 years. If honourable members refer to the bill as ATC'd, the argument is not made in the explanatory memorandum attached to the bill. If honourable members refer to the policy document that was released accompanying the bill, the argument is not made in that policy document. In fact, the only mention made of the state running the lotto is in one bullet point on page 29 of the document, under a heading entitled Technical Amendments. Deputy Speaker, what we have before us today is not a technical amendment. It's a major policy shift, and it's a very bad idea. The bill before us does not offer any detail on what the state organ will look like. Will it be the relatively efficient South African Revenue Service, or will it be Public Works, or indeed will it be South African Airways? Who will head it? How will that person or team be appointed? Who will they account to? And how will the revenue be split? These are all things we know nothing about. But despite these missing details, the committee decided to agree to the change and changed 24 months to 8 years. But this was not the only controversy. Far more important is the question of whether the department intends crowding out the private sector altogether. That is, the question of whether the minister must first go through a competitive bidding process and prove that no suitable bidder could be found before he licenses an organ of state. Or, conversely, can he proactively license an organ of state without first seeking a suitable private sector bidder? It was very clear to me, and I've confirmed this with the Deputy Director General, that the Minister wanted the power to license an organ of state without any need to first follow a competitive bidding process. In fact, I think the Minister may still be under this impression. However, let me tell Minister Davies now that the committee was of a very different opinion. On the last day of deliberations, at which the department was unbelievably not present, all the members of the committee made it very clear that the minister must first follow a competitive bidding process and then show good reason why no suitable licensee could be found. The DA argued in committee that the 24-month period be retained and not increased to 8 years. We then argued that the clause should be deleted in its entirety. And lastly, we argued that the minister should have to show good grounds for a decision to license a state entity. The last of these was successful, and we are pleased that that requirement is now contained in the bill. Our final point of objection, Deputy Speaker, regards conduit funding, and this is important for honourable members. This bill now prohibits any NGO in South Africa from applying for funding from the Lotto on behalf of other NGOs. We know that there are many excellent organizations in South Africa, like the Community Chest, for example, which specialize in sourcing funding and managing those funds on behalf of other NGOs in the community. There was evidence presented of some abuse, sure, but what this bill does is like using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. It was completely unnecessary to prohibit conduit funding altogether. Speaker, the DA and civil society eagerly awaited this bill and looked forward to a bill that we could all support. It is sad that we now have a bill before us that we cannot support. We believe that what started out as a great bill was ruined entirely by a department obsessed with the state capture of every aspect of our economy. Do you know, honourable members, that at one point in the committee process, the department actually made the argument that political office bearers should be allowed to have a financial interest in the lotto? They actually made that argument. It's on the record. Speaker, if South Africans had concerns about political bias and corruption and conflict of interest and a lack of transparency in the lotto before, they will now be even more concerned for the future of the National Lottery. Section 13A ruins this bill entirely, and it makes it impossible for the DA to support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable McIntosh.
Madam Chair, what is a national lottery? It's actually an admittance that people like to gamble, and gambling is not a good thing, but it needs to be organized and legalized so we can get money off it. Or if you want to let your petticoats, your sort of Communist Party petticoats hang out, you link it to redistributing wealth in the society. I've never heard such sophistry in my life. But the purpose of the lottery is to enable a state to give those people in our society who like to perhaps gamble more than on the odd Durban July horses. So they then establish it, and then the rationale is to take most of the money and give it to, and our bill talks about worthy, good causes. And that's what a lottery is for. It's not a tax. It's individuals, South African individuals, taking their own money, often very little money, and hoping to tatama chance. And then they can use that opportunity for helping some worthy good cause. So I think we must be very careful. And I want to say that I find the organ of state as well very sinister. Because, Madam Chair, you know there's no chapter on ethics in the Communist Manifesto. No chapter on ethics. And this organ of state has all the sinister overtones and undertones, and the Honourable Chairlady's speech made me even more concerned about what is the intention with the organ of state. Because the lotto should not be used as a kind of safety net financially for badly run municipalities, for disasters, for areas where government doesn't work. It's for worthy good causes. And it's not something which can be done year on year. It's not a debit order system. It's ad hoc. It may be for a 3-year donation. But let me say, Madam Chair, that this is basically a good bill. And it's welcome, and I think it's a commendation to the department that they are finally bringing this reform to the whole lotteries debate. I also think it's important to recognize not only our chairlady, who is an outstanding leader of the team, and also a good leader of legislation. You know, Madam Chair, this committee does work very hard. We pass a lot of laws. You know, some of my friends in the caucus say, why is that old man always speaking in debates? It's because our committee works so hard, and we've got all these laws to pass, so we've got to come and make our contributions. But Madam Chair, the way our laws are being passed, I think is fine, because our committee staff work well. We've got excellent parliamentary legal advisors. We've got the state law advisors, and the Department of Trade and Industry has its own legal department. So I think our Portfolio Committee and our chair lady do a good job. Now, Madam Chair, Section 21 deals with a linkage in the distribution agencies and the Commission to the PFMA. And I think that is very, very important. And the Commission and the distributing agencies will now be much more tightly controlled. They will be much more full-time, and they will, I believe, result in much less controversy about the awards that Lotto makes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable McIntosh. Honorable Van der Merwe.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think the Honourable Hill Lewis made a very good contribution. He's a young man with a golden future, although he was only born after I had been here for a few years. The other Honourable Member, McIntosh, also made a good contribution, but in the old South Africa, he had a nickname. We called him Haas Das. So the Honourable Haas Das and the Honourable Lewis, thank you for putting out your case very properly. We will also oppose the bill. This National Lottery Bill has been dogged by poor administration and a level of incompetence that has resulted in charities and other deserving organizations not receiving funds or not receiving funds in good time. This has been the proverbial thorn in its side since its inception. The amendment bill proposes even less scrutiny, making accountability regarding the disbursements of funds lower and thereby making it easier for corruption to flourish. The creation of a single distribution agency for disbursement of Lotto funds lent itself to maladministration. It is our submission that this agency will not be able to properly process all applications that come before them. There already exists a severe backlog of entities, although the Minister, I think, said that it's been out now. With the establishment of this single distribution agency, will it alleviate or compound the problem? That is the question. We live in a country with great many socio-economic disparities. The National Lottery was originally established as a means to help alleviate the pressure on many organizations that are doing great work in our communities. But they are restricted because of the lack of funding. Instead, we have an organization that has further restricted these organizations by not providing the funding that they need, or taking so long to give funds that some organizations were forced to close down. This amendment bill will mean that there will continue to be less accountability and more secrecy surrounding the distribution of funds of the lottery. If the current lack of transparency is anything to go by, the recommendations of the bill will mean unchecked spending continues unabatedly, with the citizenry, as always, being the ultimate loser. Deputy Speaker, there are good parts of the bill, as was pointed out by the previous speakers, but for the reasons above and also what they have mentioned, the IFP will oppose this bill.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Gwabaza.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Deputy President, Honourable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, and Honourable Members. One of the very important structures of the national lotteries is the distribution agencies. Part of the objectives for amending the National Lotteries Act is to professionalize the distributing agencies, to make the distributing agencies accountable to the National Lotteries Board, and to shorten the turnaround time for adjudicating the application and distributing the funds to the non-governmental organizations, the community-based organizations, the arts, cultural, heritage, and sports organizations. The bill provides that the minister shall appoint the members of the distributing agencies to serve on a full-time basis. It further provides that such persons must have a suitable combination of qualifications, skills, and expertise, and to consider, to evaluate, and adjudicate applications for grants, and make recommendations to the board for funding of worthy good causes. These provisions will make the distributing agencies a lot more efficient and prompt in carrying out the task of considering and adjudicating the applications and in submitting their recommendations to the board. Also, they will be able to alert the applicants timeously when their applications do not meet the requirements and assist these applicants where necessary. They are self-appointed advisors to the communities, to the small community organizations, especially in rural and historically advantaged communities, organizations which my friend, Honorable Hill Lewis, said they are organizations that submit applications on behalf of these organizations. What he forgot to mention is that those who act on behalf of these organizations charge a fee out of the allocated funds. We are convinced, Deputy Speaker, that this task should be performed by the full-time members of the distributing agencies at no fee. It is for this reason that we have directed that the regulations must provide for this free service to these disadvantaged community organizations, and that the application forms must be made easy and less cumbersome for these small but deserving good causes. Kuzosiza-ke kakhulu lokhu kusize izinhlangano zemphakathi yakithi esezindaweni zasemakhaya ezenza imisebenzi ebalulekile nesiza abantu njengama-crash, izinhlangano ezinakekela izintandane lapho iminyango kahulumeni ingakakwazi ukufinyelela khona nezinye izinhlangano ezifana nalezo. The amendment bill mandates the National Lotteries Commission to do proactive funding of good causes. The Commission will conduct research and identify a need to fund projects which address the urgent needs of communities that are aligned to government priorities. Some of these proactive funding might attend to emergencies caused by natural disasters. Lezi zidingo ke eziphuthumayo ezinjengama-bridge njenge-bridge elizosiza umphakathi nezingane zesikole ukuthi ziwele uma ziya noma zibuya esikoleni. Isikole esiyisakhiwo esingaphephile, izikole ezingakabi nezindlu zangasese, nemizi edilizwe izikhukhula, nanoma isiphi isidingo esiphuthumayo esizoxazulula inkinga ezikhungethe umphakathi. Kodwa lokhu kuzokwenzeka ngokubambisana nabaphathiswa bezifundazwe nohulumeni basekhaya. Kuyasijabulisa ke thina bakaKhongolose ukuthi abaholi bendabuko ngokumelwa yindlu kazwelonke yobukhosi bendabuko bafika emhlanganweni wekomiti bezokwenza iziphakamiso ezibalekile futhi bezokweseka lesisichibiyelo salomthetho. Futhi abaholi bezwakalisa uthando nokuzimisela ukusebenzisana nezinhlaka ze-National Lotteries ukuze kusizakale imiphakathi eyakhele izindawo ezingaphansi kobukhosi bendabuko. We must mention also that the traditional leaders made their traditional council offices available to the Commission and the distributing agencies for the purpose of conducting research and for facilitating proactive funding of urgent good causes. It is worth mentioning also that in addition to many NGOs, CPOs, and other interest groups, at least 2 national youth formations, one of which represents the SADC region as a whole, representing a wide range of youth organizations in our country, made valuable recommendations to the Portfolio Committee and expressed their support for the amendments of the National Lotteries Bill. The amendment bill sets out no less than 8 criteria which empower the minister to decide not to appoint a person to serve as a member of the distributing agency. For instance, a political office bearer and a person who has been found by a court of law in the Republic or elsewhere to have acted fraudulently, dishonestly, and unprofessionally, etc., may not be appointed. In addition, a member of the distributing agency must submit to the minister, the board, and the commission before being appointed a written declaration stating whether or not he or she has any direct interest, financially or otherwise, and whether or not such interest may constitute a conflict of interest. We, as the ANC, are satisfied that if passed into an act, this bill will serve better, will better serve our people. We therefore support the National Lotteries Amendment Bill and request Parliament to pass it. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now call upon the Honourable A.D. Alberts.
Thank you, Chair. Die Vryheidsfront Plus verskil fundamenteel van die ANC-regering op verskeie beleidsfronte. Een daarvan is die daarstelling van 'n nasionale lotery. Ons posisie is dat hierdie lotery gevoed word deur die finansiële bydraes van die armes wat alreeds min het en dra dus by tot maatskaplike probleme. In effek is 'n nasionale lotery glad nie nodig nie. Die inkomste wat die Suid-Afrikaanse Inkomstediens so effektief versamel van belastingbetalers moet bloot sinvol aangewend word en die ekonomie beter bestuur word. Indien die jaarlikse vermorsing van staatsinkomste deur middel van vrugtelose uitgawes, wanadministrasie en korrupsie net gedeeltelik gekeer kan word, sal daar genoeg inkomste wees sodat die staat sy maatskaplike verantwoordelikhede kan uitvoer. Having said this, the National Lottery is a given. In that regard, it is incumbent upon us to ensure that it is managed in accordance with legal prescripts, namely the Constitution and the National Lotteries Act. Importantly, as required by the Constitution, there must be a rational link between the objectives of the Act and the actual performance of obligations in terms of that Act. It happens too frequently that an act is promulgated without actually realizing its objectives. Too often an act allows for the creation of unconstitutional vestiges and strongholds of own interests to emerge at the cost of the taxpayer and those who should have been helped instead. Such is the case with the National Lotteries Act. I have experienced this firsthand, Minister. Upon visiting places for safety for newborn babies in Pretoria, it was interesting to note that many struggled to get financing from the Lotteries Board, and this despite the fact that most of the babies being cared for are black. Some did not even get the courtesy of a reply when applications are made. Daarom is die veranderinge wat beoog word in die lotery-wysigingswetsontwerp wel welkom. Veral die daarstelling van 'n interne hersieningsliggaam om besluite van die Raad en verspreidingsagentskappe te hersien is van groot belang. Ten minste het klein en onderbefondste organisasies wat nie geld het om regslui aan te stel nie, nou wel 'n remedie indien hulle voel hulle aansoeke is ongeregverdig afgekeur. Dit is ongelukkig so en is ook 'n sterk persepsie in die publiek dat die fondse nie uitkom waar dit die nodigste is nie. So byvoorbeeld het 'n Rykskool steun ontvang vir kulturele aktiwiteite terwyl babas nie kos het om te eet nie. Therefore, at the very least, if one can eradicate the misallocation of funds and ensure that the Act's original purpose of providing especially to those who need socio-economic assistance is realized, then there is merit to the bill. However, we cannot condone the government's attempts to also run the lottery themselves, and that will be the second reason why we won't support this bill. A last note is that it is further important to note that the realization of the objectives will only become reality if the systems and the people who run it work efficiently equitably and without moral ambivalence. To ensure this requires eternal vigilance from us, members of Parliament. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Biza ilunga elihloniphekileyo BA Khatebe.
Honourable Chairperson, the Deputy President of the Republic, the ministers and the deputy ministers, and the members of this august House. It is really surprising indeed today that the opposition parties is coming here and grandstand about this bill, whereas in the committee level, we were in agreement. There is only one thing which they had. They said they'll have an objection, not vote against the bill. That one is here. This is the committee report. It is here. It is here. But I know why today. That's why today they are doing this thing. Because one of the measuring standards which the DA is using for their members to come back to Parliament is how many times do they appear in the newspapers. So since this bill was good, they were not going to appear in the newspapers. Now they had to object here in this House. That's why they're grandstanding. But what is very important here, Chair, is that ourselves and the DA will never be in synchronization ideologically. The ANC is the disciplined force of the left. That's why, as the first entrance to this debate, I'd like to warn all the citizens of South Africa that please, the lotto ticket cannot be part of your wealth portfolio. Because when you take a chance, one lotto ticket, you've got only one chance in 14 million to win a lotto. So you cannot risk your children's money for food with buying of the lotto. So what is critical is that you must be able to control yourself and not go and spend in the lottery unnecessarily, because what is at the end of the day, you are not going to get rich. Instead, it's only going to be a few people. One person is going to win a jackpot, but the people who are going to pocket all the money are the private operators and the capitalists who will be running the lotto itself. So you cannot expose yourself to that. That's why the DA is objecting to this bill. Because for the first time, this bill is addressing the issues which are affecting the poorest of the poor. Just like the issue of the proactive funding. You go all over the country. You go all over the country in the rural areas. You'll find children who go to school have to swim over in the rivers in order to get to school. But with these provisions which are here, the Lotto and its commission will be able, without getting the application from anyone, proactively go and build a bridge there and help the people of the country. So that's why they're objecting to that. What is very important here? Is that this is the month of the stalwart of the African National Congress, Bob Oliver Tambo, who was an internationalist par excellence. When was trotting throughout the whole globe, the whole world respected him. That's why, as this Parliament, we have to do something. We have to learn from the best practices of the world. The issue of lottery does not begin here in South Africa. Actually started in 1507 in France, where the mayor of Paris tried to raise funds for the infrastructure development. That's why the people were then made to pay for that tax so that they can raise money for the infrastructure. So this thing is not new in this country. It started long time ago. But what is the difference here? Is that because in France they knew the value of the lottery, what did they do? Actually, they made the state to run it. That's why the LPJ is the one which is running the lottery in France. That's why 72% of the lotto games in France are run by a state-owned entity. Why is it a problem when it has to happen in South Africa? It's because they know that this process now will go and address the developmental needs of our country. That's why they object to that. So what is also very important, as I said that the African National Congress has got a very proud history. What it did in Polokwane, it has adopted a policy of creating a developmental state, where this developmental state will be in charge of a mixed economy. And then in the mixed economy, you'll have the state, you will have the labor, you will have the capital, you will have the civil society, all working together to raise the economy of the country. So why is it now that it is a problem that a state must intervene and run a lottery? The answer is very simple. When running there are a lot of billions of rands which are involved. But how much money go to the good causes is only 34%. So it means that if it goes to become a state-owned entity, which is going to run a lottery, it means that those gains will be going back to the fiscus. When they go to the fiscus, they'll be redirected to the poorest of the poor. That's why they don't want a state organ to run a lottery. Those are the reasons. That's why they don't want that. They don't want that. They come and pretend here. They come and pretend here as if they are fighters of corruption. I'm telling you, one of the best state organs in this country, the Reserve Bank of South Africa, when the ANC took it over in 1994, it was bankrupt. It had a deficit of more than 25 billion. But as we're speaking now, it is one of the best reserve banks which you can see in the world. Whose work was that? It is this African National Congress-led government. It is it. So we're proud that this state organ is going to play a positive role. It is going to play a positive role. Why? Very simple. These onerous conditions. No, what is very critical? One, the 4 criteria which the private operators must fulfill in order to win a license is what? These are the 4 criteria. One, they must implement the national government policy and priorities. Number 2, the operator must grow local industries and procure goods from the local manufacturers. As we are speaking now, part of the industrial policy action plan is to grow manufacturing in this country. When you go and buy a lotto ticket, you must know that that paper you are going to get, that paper has been produced in Greece, not in South Africa. Whereas we have this advanced paper industry in this country. But that private operator has procured those goods abroad at the expense of our own people and our workers in this country. So when we say that the state organ must run this thing, they know that the black economic empowerment will be enhanced. Because one of the critical aspects is that the operator must support the promotion of broad-based black economic empowerment and transformation. We know that the DA does not support that. Although for party politics for the elections, they'll always say that we support. That's why Honorable James said that he supports the diversified economic empowerment. He said that. They do not support the broad-based economic empowerment because when we support the broad-based, it means that we are lifting the majority of the poor. So when we're lifting the majority of the poor out of the poverty line, it means that they'll never get a chance of running this country again. Hence, they are going to oppose it. What is also critical is that the skills of running a lotto, they are based outside the country. One of the conditions which we are putting here is that there must be skills and technology transfer. And all the other operators which were operating, they failed dismally on that particular regard. That's why that we, as the African National Congress, not the department, we as the African National Congress, as the members of the African National Congress, the disciplined force of the left, we said that if a company or operator does not comply with this 4, the minister must terminate that contract. Immediately, if the minister terminates the contract, a state organ can come and run it. And a lot of state organs can run it. Do you know ITC? Do you know ITC? The ITC all over the country, the economy of this country is hot because of the projects done by the ITC. We can give it to the ITC. It can run it like no other person's business. As what is worrying here is that Honorable Fanad Melve and Honorable McIntosh, they are saying this issue of the state organ running a lottery is sinister idea. But at the same time, they acknowledge that the Department of Trade and Industry is good. They've got this capacity. You know what? The Department of Trade and Industry is also a state organ. It's also a state organ. So what is critical here is that as South Africa, we must not beat ourselves. We are doing good. We are transforming this country. We are ensuring that there's broadening participation in the whole economy of the country. So that's why I'll call all the sane members, all the patriotic people of this country and in this parliament to go and support this bill because it's going to bring real transformation for our people on the ground. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
I now call upon the Honourable Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you, Chairperson. I've got very little time. There's only one issue. In France, the lottery is operated by Le Français de Jeu, which is a government-owned entity. In New Zealand, the lottery is operated by a state-owned trading organisation called the New Zealand Lotteries Commission. In Canada, the lottery is operated by an interprovincial lotteries corporation which is owned by the provinces. In Australia, the operators are licensed at both at state and territory level and consist of both government-owned entities and private entities. What we have been saying is that we have one model. There's a few companies internationally that run lotteries. They've usually got lot at the end of their names. They form consortia with local interest groups and they bid for the lottery. What we are saying is that if this model does not yield us sufficient in terms of all the criteria, local procurement, skills development and technology transfer, and broad-based black economic empowerment, we should have the option to contract to get a state agency to run the lottery and contract one of these companies as a service provider. That's what we say. I'm afraid we're at the time in the parliamentary cycle where rationality doesn't prevail. What we've heard is a lot of ideological rubbish, which is basically grandstanding around the election. I don't think you're going to get many votes from the position you've taken on this bill today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? I hear objections. Those in favour will say aye. And those say no. And the ayes have it.
Chairperson,
Honourable Member.
I rise on Rule 26 and ask you to determine whether or not there's a quorum in the House, please.
Members, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes so that we can determine that after. Kunjani ba? Khona nathi.
Order. Order, please. Let's be seated. Let's take our seats. Honourable members, to determine the quorum, I'm going to request that we use the electronic system. I'm going to ask you to press the button, any button in front of you, to determine your presence.
Chairperson, I think it's important to bring to your attention that the monitors on this side of the House are not working.
Are you okay? Are you okay? All members then press the button. Have we all pressed the buttons? Thank you. Order, please, order. Order. Order, honorable members, can you indulge? Can we rerun this? Can we press again, but this time from our allocated seats? Can we do that? Can we press our buttons from our allocated seats? Order, order, please. Let's just press the buttons from our allocated seats. Have we done so? Okay, thank you. Order, order, we can raise our hands without shouting, really.
Who should be here? Order, honourable members. Can we just be quiet, please? And those who want to assist here, it should be simply one whip from each party. If you want to be here to assist, just one whip from each party. And order, order, order. Order, order. I'm told that even your noises can disturb the technology here.
Honourable members, order. We'll have to suspend this.
Are not bills. I think it's only this one that's a bill. The other matters are referrals.
No, that's what I meant, sir, that we postpone the decision on this one. Then we continue with the. And I'll request the secretary to read the third order.
Second reading debate.
Order, please. Order.
Judicial Matters Amendment Bill.
I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
I move that the bill be referred back to the committee which considered it for further consideration.
The motion is that the bill be referred back to the committee which considered it. Are there any objections to that? No objections. Agreed to.
Person?
The secretary will read the fourth order.
Point of order. Chairperson, we don't have any objection to it. We just wanted to have clarity, the reason why it is referred back to the committee.
Honourable member, I would assume that if you say you didn't have any objection, you knew, but the secretary will read the fourth order.
Consideration of Protection of State Information Bill. Report of ad hoc committee on Protection of State Information Bill thereon. And the President's reservation on constitutional of bill as submitted to him.
I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
I move that the House refers the Protection of State Information Bill, the report of the ad hoc committee on the Protection of State Information Bill thereon, and the President's reservations on constitutionality of the bill to the committee which originally considered it.
The motion is that the bill, the report thereon, and the President's reservations on the constitutionality of the bill be referred back to the committee which originally considered it. Are there any objections to that? No objections. Agreed to. I again recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honourable Chairperson, I move that the House notes 1, the resolution of the House to refer the Protection of the State Information Bill, the report of the ad hoc committee on Protection of State Information Bill thereon, and the President's reservations on the constitutionality of the bill to the committee that originally considered it. 2, further note that the ad hoc committee on the Protection of the State Information Bill was the committee which originally considered the bill, and the President's reservations on the constitutionality of the bill, and that the committee has, in terms of the rules, ceased to exist after it completed its task and reported on the bill to the President and the President's reservations on October 15, 2013. 3, re-establishes the ad hoc committee on protection of state information bill with the same composition, membership, chairperson, and powers as its predecessor as of the minutes proceedings 12 September 2013, page 3459, and instructs the committee to further consider its report on the bill, and further instructs the committee to incorporate in its work the proceedings and all work of previous committee up to including the 15th of October 2013, and sets the deadline by which the committee must report back to the House on the 7th of November 2013. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Chief Whip. I now put the motion. Are there any objections?
Chairperson, could we perhaps just ask consideration for the inclusion of a reference to the rules, to ask the committee to come back and to comply with Rule 2513E. That means to include minority views in the report. And thank you.
Chairperson, it's not an amendment. The referral, the honourable gentleman, honourable member knows why we are referring these bills back to the committees. She knows. She's not amending. Let the House agree to this and go forward and do the work.
We support that, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Sometimes you put us on nerves here. The Secretary will now read the fifth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Arts and Culture on filling of vacancies on the South African Language Board, PanSALB.
I now call upon the Honourable T.B. Sunduza to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairperson. As you know, South Africa in the past promoted only 2 languages, which was English and Afrikaans. It's
Order, please.
I withdraw,
Order.
Chairperson. You can't make that sexist statement. Languages as well. The Portfolio Committee on Arts and Culture advised the Minister to dissolve the PanSALB board due to a number of challenges it identified. Soon after the dissolution, the Minister advertised for nomination of board members. As the Portfolio Committee was set up until midnight because we had to, and worked over weekends to ensure that there's 20 candidates have been, could be ran for National Assembly for adoption. I request this House to adopt the following names from which the Minister of Arts and Culture will appoint not more than 14 candidates as board members of the South African Language Board. P. Sobashe, A. Pindane, P. K. Makudu, Professor Nyamende, N. Levin, W. Castens, M. Alberts, C. Mayevu, Madiba, Nemutangela, Nduli, Nguna, Chama, C.R. White, J.J. Malan, M. Izwane, L.K. Hamadi Adebola, Blose, Mkize, and Tays. Honourable Chairperson, the candidates that have been shortlisted possess a variety of skills and expertise on language matters in South Africa, language planning, legal and financial management skills. Chairperson, one of the candidates in the shortlist currently is employed as a caretaker chief executive committee of PanSALB. Should the minister responsible for arts and culture choose to appoint him to the board, I also request the House to adopt that the candidate will have to resign as a caretaker CEO with immediate effect. Thus, the contract must be terminated. I wish to conclude by reminding people of all honourable members that the Freedom Charter, that some of them decide they don't know, that's why they would make these sexist remarks, that all people shall have equal rights to use their own languages and to develop their own folk culture and customs. I therefore urge you all honourable members to adopt
The report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Science and Technology on consideration of a short list of candidates for appointment.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson, Honourable Deputy President, Honourable Ministers and Deputy Ministers. This is a report in 2 sub-reports, as the orders follow each other, 6 and 7. Of the Human Science Research Council, the appointment of the new board, which is effective from the 1st of November to 2013. On the 9th of September 2013, the Speaker of the National Assembly referred to the Portfolio Committee on Science and Technology, hereafter the committee, a short list of candidates for consideration in order to reconstitute the Human Science Research Council Board. The Human Science Research Council, hereafter the Council, was established in terms of the Human Science Research Council Act number 23 of 1968. However, the Human Science Research Council Act number 17 of 2008 replaced the 1968 Act. The Council promotes research in the field of human sciences in order to improve understanding of social conditions and the process of social change. The objects of the Council are to initiate, undertake, and foster strategic basic research and applied research in human sciences, and together analyze and publish data relevant to the developmental challenges in the Republic, elsewhere in Africa, and in the rest of the world, especially by means of projects linked to public sector-oriented collaborative programs. inform the effective formulation and monitoring of policy, and to evaluate the implementation of policy. Stimulate public debate through the effective dissemination of fact-based results of research. Help build research capacity and infrastructure for the human sciences in the Republic and elsewhere in Africa. Foster and support research collaboration networks and institutional linkages within the human sciences research community. Respond to the needs of vulnerable and marginalized groups in society by researching and analyzing developmental problems, thereby contributing to the improvement of the quality of their lives. And finally, to develop and make publicly available new data sets to underpin research, policy development, and public discussion of the key issues of development, and to develop new and improved methodologies for use in their development. The Human Sciences Research Council Act stipulates the process to be followed when appointing the board and states that the Minister of Science and Technology, hereafter the Minister, must submit a short list of candidates to the National Assembly for its approval. The board must comprise persons who have distinguished themselves in the field of human sciences and who have special qualifications, experience, and skills in relation to some aspect of the functions of the Council. Furthermore, at least one member must have financial expertise, and one other member must be a distinguished representative of the social science research community in the rest of Africa. The board comprises a chairperson, no less than 6, and no more than 9 other members, and the chief executive officer as the ex-officio member. The board members hold office for a period of 4 years and may not serve more than 2 consecutive terms. The term of the current board expires on the 31st of October 2013. The new board will serve from the 1st of November 2013 to 31st October 2017. The committee deliberated on the shortlist on 18 September 2013 and agreed that all candidates had the requisite qualifications and experience to serve on the Council's board. After adopting its report on the shortlist of candidates, the committee received additional information from the Minister of Science and Technology regarding a candidate who requested to be excused from the original shortlist. The committee, having considered the shortlist and thereafter the information received from the Minister of Science and Technology, recommended that the National Assembly approve the shortlist without the said candidate. I therefore present to the House the following reports of the committee for its consideration. We have 19 names here instead of 20 because of a member that had requested to be excused. The names are Professor T. Pillay, Dr. B. Tema, Professor P. Zulu, Professor R. Mulitane, Professor V. Msila, Professor L. Kalinge, Professor S. Ismail Abdi, Dr. P. Dube, Professor B. Marcus, Professor S. Hasim, Dr. G. Netswira, Professor A. Olukoshi, Professor E. Uliana, Mr. N. Rowan, Professor R. Farniker, Advocate R. Tehal, Dr. E. Madela Mta, Ms. N. Bacha, and Dr. M. Busin. That's the first report. The second sub-report of the committee, the second report of the Portfolio Committee on Science and Technology on the consideration of a short list of candidates for appointment to the board of the Human Sciences Research Council, HSRC, dated 9 October 2013. The Portfolio Committee on Science and Technology, having further considered the short list of candidates for the appointment to the board of the HSRC in terms of Section 5.3 of the Human Sciences Research Council Act 2008, Act number 17 of 2008, referred to it, CATC, dated 9 September 2013, recommends that the House approves the second report on the matter. The committee adopted and published a report for the House to approve a short list of candidates, CATC of 18 September 2013. On 18 September 2013, the Department of Science and Technology presented a short list of 20 names for consideration for appointment to the board of the HSRC. The department advised the committee that Professor Amanda Lawrence, an expert in the field of statistics, was no longer available for nomination to the board. The committee noted the valuable skill and expertise that the candidate could have brought to the HSRC. In a letter dated 27 September 2013, the committee received new information from the Minister of Science and Technology that Professor Lawrence had subsequently reconsidered her position and was now available for nomination. In the light of this new information, the committee agreed to submit a second report to the House by which it recommends that the House approves the inclusion of the candidature of Professor Lawrence. This will be in addition to the shortlist published on 18 September 2013, C-ATC of 18 September 2013, page 3530. So the report that is to be considered here by the House, having presented these two reports, I now appeal to the House to adopt these two reports. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order, Honourable Members. The question before the House is the approval of the following short list of candidates who will be considered for approval to the Board of Human Science Research Council. The names are Professor T. Pillay, Dr. P. B. Tema, Professor P. Zulu, Professor R. Muletsani, Professor V. Msila, Professor L. Kalinge, Professor L. Ismail Abdi, Dr. P. Dube, Professor B. Marcus, Professor S. Hasim, Dr. G. Netwera, Professor A. Olukoshi, Professor E. Oliama, Mr. N. Rowan, Professor R. Van Niekerk, Advocate R. Dehal, Dr. Madela Mtla, MS N. Bacha, Dr. M. Basin, Professor A. Lawrence. Are there any objections to the list, short list? No objections agreed to. Therefore, the short list of candidates will be forwarded to the Minister of Science and Technology for consideration. The Secretary will read the 8th order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises on oversight visit to ESCOM's Medupi Power Station from 24th to 25th July 2013.
I now recognize the Honorable H.P. Maluleka to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairperson. It would be necessary to preface this report by sharing with this House the magnitude of the infrastructure project that the Portfolio Committee strategically undertook to carry oversight on. The Medupi Coal Power Station is the largest construction project in the Southern Hemisphere. There are 38 contract packages with more than 300 contractors and subcontractors, with the project being valued at 105 billion rands. There are 6 coal power generating units, which will produce a total generating capacity of 4,800 megawatts. The plant will have greater efficiency than existing ESCOM power plants and will be the largest dry-cooled coal power station in the world. It is one of the biggest projects in the world currently. Given the scale of the project, it is rendered vulnerable to different sets of risks that may lead to delays. Some of these have been experienced during the implementation process. The report raises several challenges, and we need to note the following actions that have been taken to address these challenges. ESCOM and the Minister of Public Enterprises have made several interventions to minimize further delays in the project and are working closely with the management of the main contractors to ensure that they bring in more experienced engineers and technicians and put in extra hours. ESCOM has implemented the conditions of the contract with regard to performance guarantees by calling on the bond on Alstom. In addition, subcontractors who have been found to have violated contracts and undertakings have been handed over to the law enforcement agencies. The bond on Hitachi has not been called, as ESCOM is still finalizing an appropriate and severe penalty. Work stoppages have been successfully resolved. The Medupi Legacy Project, as it is one of the most important projects for addressing economic growth, employment creation, and improve the lives of our people. The Medupi Legacy Project is a cornerstone of the supplier development and localization efforts. It has set objectives such as a well-coordinated and integrated program, ensuring that ESCOM leaves a sustainable legacy in the Lephalale municipal area. The Waterberg District Municipality and contributing to the Limpopo provincial gross domestic product. Eskom alone has procured 202 million rands locally, with 70% of the procurement from companies owned by black women. Contracts worth 1.67 billion rands have been placed with Lepalale and Waterberg-based suppliers. 80% of support services companies' employees are women. Eskom procurement-related procedures cover supplier development and localization, where targets are included in the contracts and as such monitored for compliance. Targets cover broad-based black economic empowerment, black women-owned, black youth-owned, local procurement and skill development. With regard to job creation, on-site employment as at March 2013 was 16,800 people. 43% of the workforce are people from the Lepalale area, 72% of unskilled and semi-skilled workers are from Limpopo province, 95% of the workforce is South African, 53% of the workforce are youth under the age of 35. The project site currently has 1,080 women and 59 people with disabilities employed by the contractors. The BUILD program has been used to contribute to skills development and facilitate manufacturing capability in South Africa. The Eskom Contract Academy has witnessed 38 business owners graduating and 15 who are currently undergoing training. The graduation ceremony is convened by the University of Limpopo. Contractors have committed to train 2,128 skills development candidates. The objective is to train skilled people who can be employed either on-site or in the Lepalale municipal and traditional authority areas. Together with the Department of Basic Education, the project has hosted approximately 1,500 learners annually, wherein young professionals at Medupi share the career opportunities in the construction, engineering, and project management environment. Boiler manufacturer has invested 24 million rands in the Tlatlong Training Center. With regard to infrastructure development, Eskom has invested more than 40 million rand in sewage and electrical distribution systems in Lepalale. Eskom is building and renovating 7 rural clinics. Eskom is also funding 6 mobile schools as well as teachers and equipment. Eskom has spent 2.3 billion rand on housing in Lepalale since 2007. Whilst detractors have raised a number of issues, let the facts on how the project has dealt with challenges speak for
your
itself.
time has expired.
We table the report for consideration. Thank you, Chair.
I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honorable Chairperson, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation on oversight visit to headquarters of Department of International Relations and Cooperation.
I now call upon the Honorable H.T. Magama to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairperson, Deputy President, Ministers, Deputy Ministers. Honorable members, the committee conducted an oversight to the OR Tambo headquarters building of the department, and we wish to report as follows and request the House to adopt the report. Perhaps just by way of highlighting some of the issues that emanated, the committee noted and commended the department for the establishment of a youth directorate, putting matters of youth at the center of foreign policy making and execution. The committee also noted and supported and indeed commended the department for seconding most of its seasoned diplomats to provide support to the AU chair, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who would include being made on the ROSA program, the registration of South Africans abroad, because this program really is meant to ensure that they use the opportunity chair when traveling abroad, so that whenever these disasters strike, the department in undertaking public diplomacy through various social media platforms and periodic imbizos. While we acknowledge these efforts, we believe that there is still a lot more that can be done, and indeed should be done, to ensure that we demystify international relations as a tool of advancing our domestic agenda, and a program that seeks to engage the public in a proactive manner on matters of foreign policy. We were satisfied as well that the department was indeed putting in place systems and processes that are necessary to correct and mitigate in some instances some challenges faced by the department. We've, amongst others, noted and indeed supported attempts by the department at prioritizing the recruitment and employment of women and people with disabilities. This indeed is consistent with the President's State of the Nation address, but again, we believe more can be done in this regard, of course acknowledging the attempts of the government and the department in this case. While, Chairperson, the general impression we got was that the department's performance is indeed improving over time, especially in the areas we've pointed out. We, however, believe that there is still room for improvement. We have, in conclusion, Chairperson, adopted the view that it is only through working together, the executive and the legislature, through sharpening our oversight and really working together in a cooperative manner with the executive, that we will be able to achieve our country's domestic priorities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honourable Chairperson, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. All members, that concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.